A very warm welcome. We are at Luthuli House, where we're going to be speaking to the Deputy Secretary General, Ms. Jessie Duarte, who's going to be talking to us about all things SONA and basically preparations going into that a very important day within the country. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sparing the time to talk to us ahead of this.
It's a great pleasure.
We know that today you guys have been very busy. There's been preparations happening. The ANN7 that's taking place, 4-day event. But just talking in, or just getting into the interview, let's talk about the SONA. We've seen at the January 8th statement that radical economic transformation has been the theme. How exactly is that going to filter into this year's State of the Nation address?
Well, we can't say what's in the State of the Nation address at all, but we can hope that the discussions that took place at our Lekgotla will find expression in the State of the Nation address. And certainly radical economic transformation is top of our mind right now. And that really talks to the structural rearrangement of our economy to ensure that the economy is able to include many more South Africans, particularly Black South Africans, African people and women in particular. And that means looking at the production cycle in our country, the means of the ownership of production, and also ensuring that the state accepts some responsibility in a mixed economy to provide incentives to small to medium enterprises. We have 12 very urgent tasks that we have communicated to the ANC government, and we've said to them that we believe that they must invest more money in townships and rural communities and ensure that we build post-apartheid cities, new cities in our rural areas and vibrant businesses in our townships. We really do need to mitigate against the tight centralized control of retail in our country. You build a big mall in a township and you kill all the small businesses that used to be there. In addition to that, of course, is the added disadvantage of having many people open too many little house shops. There needs to be proper structured development that will enable small entrepreneurs in townships to grow and grow effectively. We also believe that no less than 30% of all government spend must go to the small to medium business enterprises and to Black South Africans in general. Right now, we understand that many of the big tenders would go to a big company, Murray and Roberts and so on, and we are simply not giving space to new entrants in our economy, in the construction industry. It's tightly controlled, it's very centralized, and one could talk about that in many other instances.
And touching on your basically point of private businesses and how they benefit mostly within the economy of the country, how exactly is government planning on reeling that in and basically keeping private businesses also plowing back into communities and so forth?
Well, private business is important, so let's not undermine that. What we're saying is we must expand the possibilities away from a centralized few. Take the banking industry, for example, where you have 4 major banks in South Africa manipulating the entire market space. Is there space for more? Yes, we believe there is. There should be more licenses given to localized banking institutions. We're also saying that the post-bank license must be realized now. We believe that in every little dorpie in this country, you will find a post office. And this has absolutely nothing to do with SASSA money. I want to put that to you very bluntly because I think people juxtapose wrong things together. This has to do with people's access to being bankable. And in our country, there are too many unbankable people.
What legacy, according to you, would he have left?
Well, President Jacob Zuma's legacy is really the servicing of the poor in the main, and looking for what could we do to actually alleviate the plight of the poor. So one saw infrastructure development really, over R1 trillion being spent on infrastructure in this country is unheard of. Looking at the building of schools, bridges over rivers, hospitals, clinics, roads, things that the urban creature is not going to see, but that the rural people certainly do appreciate, because their lives are a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, it's easier. Definitely the advancement of the small town era. We've seen towns like Ermelo, Nelspruit, small towns in the Eastern Cape beginning to grow. So definitely that has been a mark of this particular presidency. Also looking at planning. It was President Jacob Zuma who came with the idea of a national development plan.
And then going back to the legacy and the national development program that was set by the president, he basically asserted at his previous State of the Nation address that unfortunately, as much as it's a great plan, but the chances of certain things being met, like unemployment being alleviated to the par that he'd like it to be, is unfortunately still a dream. Do you feel that we're still on track for the National Development Plan in certain areas?
Top of mind in our country is job creation, and for that reason, we're talking about the restructuring of our economy to broaden the base, to make sure that more South Africans can participate in the economy, to decentralize the economy, which is really very centralized in the hands of very few people. Although those companies provide jobs, they're not adequate. They don't expand enough for us to create more jobs. The mining industry is a case in point. We argue for beneficiation of our commodities so that more people can benefit from the natural resources of South Africa. Instead, what happens right now is our minerals are taken from pit to port. Nothing in between. No jobs are created except jobs in the mining sector and some jobs at the ports, where people make sure that the coal or gold or whatever else is leaving the country leaves it untouched. So what we need to do is to say very openly, our country needs to implement the mining charter. The MPRDA implement, promulgate the amendments to that. Let's get on with it. Let's stop discussing and arguing. Implement the national minimum wage. If you provide a national minimum wage, you're putting more money, hopefully, into the hands of people to spend in your own economy. That also spreads the possibilities for more manufacturing to take place.
Talking about the trade agreements that you've been saying, or talking about like AGOA and so forth, and relooking that, there's also been a call by the Democratic Alliance that ever since South Africa came out of ICC, which was also part of an agreement of sorts, that maybe other African countries will follow suit. Do you feel that we could actually be people that are setting the trend or setting the standard, should we decide to leave certain trade agreements with other countries?
Well, you know, we're not leaving trade agreements. We're calling for a restructuring of some trade agreements that are not in our national interest. And I think the ICC is a totally different matter, because that's the International Criminal Court. And as you know, the African Union has taken a decision by and large to leave the International Criminal Court over a period. Many African countries will leave it. Because of the view that the ICC has in fact been quite biased negatively towards African heads of state, and has not looked at matters internationally in a much more balanced and fair way, and also then develop the African Court of Justice. So it's not just doing away with one thing and there's nothing in its place. And I think they're very different issues. Trade agreements by and large are really the heart and soul of what investments are about. So we must, as South Africa, also look at deepening our trade agreements with the African continent much more, and making sure that our customs duties and our exchanges and the movement of goods and people is easier than we are making it at the moment. Because if we relax trade relations with more African states and we're able to move goods more easily in Africa, that's the ideal situation for all of us on the continent. And that's an AU vision. you know. But when we make a trade agreement with any other country, we also have to assert our national interests up front. And sometimes with very big economies, we're almost in a state where we cannot argue against what they say. We've got to accept that for them to take our citrus, we're going to have to take their chickens, even if that means the entire destruction of our chicken industry. So what the ANC is saying, we should be able to review trade agreements that are not in our national interests and look at them differently. I was listening to a farmer who is a chicken farmer talking about how our chicken industry has shrunk. The job cost of shrinking the chicken industry in South Africa is huge. It's not a job cost we can afford, and so that's why it's important for us to review that particular element of the AGOA agreement, but doesn't mean we're throwing AGOA out of the window. AGOA is a good agreement, but we also have to assert our national interests right up front.